Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was neglected by Kakashi but trained by Jiraiya, Kurenai, Guy, and Ebisu. Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now start the fanfic. Welcome to Konoha. Now let's just skip all the blah 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 that you've all read countless times and could probably recite by heart. To cut to the chase, it's the Chunin exams, specifically the month-long break, and our favorite blonde knucklehead needs to get training to kick Neji Hyuga's. We find said blonde at the hospital since he wanted to check in on his friends before getting to training. What he doesn't know is that things are about to change rapidly for him and his dream of becoming Hokage is going to be much more believable than anyone could imagine. Konoha Hospital. Just after the preliminaries, day 1 of the month training. Naruto calmly walked into the hospital despite having no love whatsoever for the place. It wasn't that the doctors didn't do their job whenever he was here or even the indifference they usually showed him, it was the smell and feel of the place. It reeked of disinfectant and death while feeling like several people were still there even after their bodies passed. Shaking those thoughts away, Naruto entered and was only mildly surprised to see his supposed teacher, Kakashi Hatake, there. Already guessing he was there for Naruto's teammate, Sasuke Uchiha, Naruto was merely going to greet him and check on the others. Hey Kakashi-sensei. Naruto stated before being rudely interrupted by the man. Sorry Naruto, but I'm going to be training Sasuke during the month. However, I've got an Ebisu to train you. Kakashi stated not even looking up from his book, which was causing the nurses to twitch their eyes badly. Said instructor came over to the two while giving a nod to Naruto and Naruto merely raised an eyebrow. Yeah, I wasn't going to ask you for training Kakashi. I was just saying hi. As for Ebisu training me, I mean no offense but you're a sensor and tracking specialist and I'm not suited really for either of those. Because of that, I'll have to decline training with you and see about one of the other Jonin or Chunin for training since my so-called teacher couldn't bother to find me someone that suits my way of fighting. Although, do say hi to Konohamaru for me. Naruto stated making Kakashi frown and Ebisu to nod with a smile before Naruto walked off to the patient rooms. Ebisu merely chuckled, you're making a mistake not training that boy, Kakashi. Ebisu stated with his chuckle still going. Kakashi merely frowned, why? He's got no talent when compared to Sasuke. Kakashi stated making Ebisu laugh loudly. No talent, Kakashi you're more blind than your handicap suggests. Not only does that boy have more energy and chakra than a quarter of our Jonin roster put together, but at the young age of 14 he could do both variants of the Shadow Clone Jutsu flawlessly. Jutsu I remind you, that he learned by himself with no instruction or supervision. A Jonin and Cage level technique and he performs them flawlessly. On top of that, he's an Uzumaki and I can guess who his parents were just based on that alone. All that means he has more potential than possibly anyone else in the village and that's without his tenant being a factor. If all that doesn't show his potential, then you truly are blind. Ebisu stated making Kakashi frown heavily. That brat is weak and will never live up to his parents or Sasuke. Kakashi stated making Ebisu frown, but it was someone else that spoke. Is that so? A voice stated making them turn and widen their eyes at the sight of the person. I think the Hokage would be interested to hear just what your opinion of my godson is. The voice stated with authority while showing his displeasure by grabbing Kakashi by the shoulder, hard. Why wait, that's not what I meant. Kakashi tried to plead lamely but the person wasn't having any of it. Tell it to sensei. The voice stated before disappearing with Kakashi while Ebisu Mary released a sigh of relief thankful that his opinion of Naruto had shifted after the incident with Konohamaru. After meeting Naruto, Konohamaru had gotten serious about training and had been progressing well. Granted there were still times of him skipping out on lessons, but Naruto had helped Ebisu realize that Konohamaru had the right to enjoy his childhood before he was forced to grow up when he became a ninja. Ebisu would be a bit relaxed for now, but when the boy became Genin then he was going to become a teacher that would help mold Konohamaru into being a Hokage that surpassed his grandfather. Maybe Naruto would be both of those two. Training Ground 3. Later on, Naruto was doing some simple stretches while waiting for someone. After visiting a sleeping Hinata, a stubborn Lee, and a happily eating Choji in the hospital, Naruto was approached by an Anbu informing him that someone approached the Hokage about training him for the month and to meet him at this training field. So now here he was waiting and hoping the person in question wasn't going to be a lazy like Kakashi was. He got his answer as a man walked in looking like a kabuki performer and a kanji for oil on his head plate. The man merely walked up to Naruto and stared down at him looking him over. Well, you're nothing overly impressive at first glance, but neither was my last student. The man stated making Naruto's eye twitch, I'm Jiraiya of the 3 Sannin, I'll be training you for the month and depending on how you do in the exams, I may become your permanent teacher. The now named Jiraiya stated making Naruto blink. No offense, but are you a more offense-oriented fighter? I'm not really a huge tactician, defensive, or outmaneuver kind of fighter. My policy has always been a good offense is more useful than a good defense. Oh, and if you know anything about seals, could you check my seal? Your former snake teammate did something to it. Naruto stated since he didn't want his or Jiraiya's time wasted if Jiraiya's skillsets weren't going to match up to Naruto's style and he wanted to remove whatever the snake did since his control felt out of whack. Jiraiya frowned and examined his seal before he cursed and quickly undid the overlapping seal causing Naruto to launch back and tumble, son of a bitch. I'm gonna kick you gray-haired bastard. Naruto shouted as he got up only to pause at the face of Jiraiya struggling to hold back some laughs. Not being able to take it anymore, Jiraiya released a loud rumbling laugh before patting Naruto's head. Oh kid, you remind me of your parents. Jiraiya stayed making Naruto's eyes widen but Jiraiya held a hand up to stop him from asking. Yes kid, I knew your parents and I'm sad to confirm that they are dead. Before you ask, I can't tell you about them, not because I don't want to but because they left strict orders not to tell you till specific times. Jiraiya states making Naruto stop whatever he was about to ask. Your mother is a secret till you are Chunin and your father is a secret till your Jonin are deemed strong enough to handle things. Both of them were feared and respected shinobi, so with them gone there was too much of a chance of someone trying to kill you so you couldn't become as strong as them or kidnapping you to mold into their weapon. Jiraiya explained making Naruto both happy and saddened. He was happy since his parents were such badasses and they didn't abandon him like a drunk asshole had insinuated. He was sad because not only was it confirmed they were dead but he had to wait even longer to learn who they are. How come you know so much? Naruto asked and Jiraiya smiled sadly before kneeling down in front of him. Because I'm your godfather. Jiraiya stated making him widen his eyes. I know I didn't see you kid, but it was truly because I didn't have time to stop in and see you. I was in the village 5 minutes and then I was out again taking care of missions and duties to the village. However, I always left you gifts for your birthday and put money into your account whenever I stopped in. Jiraiya stated patting his head while smiling sadly and Naruto nodded with some tears in his eyes. Jiraiya then stood as Naruto wipes his eyes. Now, I want to make up for lost time and give you the training that Kakashi has obviously been neglecting. Jiraiya stated making Naruto nod with a few tears in his eyes still. Alright, first we're going to go over everything Kakashi has trained you in and then I'm going to give you a field test to fully see what you're competent in and what you need to work on the most. Jiraiya stated and Naruto frowned. The only thing he's taught me is teamwork in the tree exercise. Even then the tree exercise was just him showing it once and then leaving me and Sasuke to keep trying it. Naruto stated and Jiraiya had to fight back a scowl upon his face since Kakashi has been a sensei for almost 9 months and that was all he taught Naruto. The Cyclops was lucky Jiraiya didn't send him to the hospital like Tsunade used to do him. Kakashi was lucky since the Hokage had set things up with a simple matter. If Sasuke didn't perform better than Naruto did in the finals, since if Kakashi was right then even with Jiraiya's help Naruto should fail, then Kakashi was going to be in deep shit. I see, I'll deal with that later but for now let's see what you've got. Jiraiya stated as Naruto nodded and got ready. 2 hours later, Naruto was panting slightly as Jiraiya had put him through the ringer in a variety of tests and exercises to see where he stood on different things. Meanwhile, Jiraiya still looked fresh as a daisy even though his clothes did have some tears and scorch marks, but that was from the proverbial gauntlet Naruto put him through when he trapped an area with everything he had. Jiraiya had to admit, the kid had a devious mind when it came to traps, but then add in his stealth and overall brute strength and the kid could give seasoned Anbu some trouble. He idly mused about signing Naruto up for the village defense force since the kid could make the enemy really pay the price for trying to get into the village. Add in the kid's stealth, no doubt from him constantly running around in Kill Me Orange and successfully hiding from non-censor types, meant he could be great for assassination and espionage. He almost wished Tsunade was still in the village since Naruto's raw brute strength could be vastly improved by her monster strength technique. Shaking those thoughts away for another time, he looked at his new student. Alright, meet me here tomorrow to learn your training regimen and get to work on improving what you have already. If you want something to do today, I want you to do the tree walking exercise until you absolutely can't anymore. That should help get your chakra back into sync and increase your control, which will help you learn and master new jutsu. Jiraiya stated making Naruto nod. Jiraiya then left the area and went to the Hokage Tower where he found his former teacher, Hiruzen Sarutobi, sitting there finishing some paperwork. Kakashi was talking out of his, kid's got more potential than I've seen in years. Hell, he could put Minato and Kushina to shame if trained properly and given a chance to really shine. And that's not even counting the Kyuubi if he decided to use it. Jiraiya stated and Hiruzen nodded while taking a puff from his pipe. If what you told me about that organization is true, it would be wise if he knew how to become deadly without using the Kyuubi. If they are intent on capturing the Biju, then that stands to reason that they all have skills, contingencies, and plans to take down the beasts and their hosts. That leads me to believe that it would be unwise if Naruto was dependent and focused on using the fox's power against his enemies. Doing so could be disastrous when they come for him and anyone helping him as a result. Hiruzen stated making Jiraiya nod. I inspected the seal and it's still trickling the chakra slowly and thus Naruto can only tap into it at times of extreme emotional moments or if he's exhausted his normal chakra. Maybe when he's older I'll help him start tapping into the Kyuubi's power, but for right now I think the tighter the seal the better in this case since it will be harder for anyone to interfere with the Kyuubi, though that could also alienate the fox and the kid from each other. From what my sources in Kumo told me, their eight-tailed host has complete control and synchronization with their Biju. That means he has access to all the abilities his Biju does and can even turn into the Biju without succumbing to its rage or base instincts. Jiraiya stated, making Hiruzen nod. Do what you can, Jiraiya, get Naruto into top form as a ninja and then worry about him as a Jinchuriki. Konoha has never had to depend on a Biju container to be strong and both our two previous hosts were formidable without the Biju at all. I want Naruto to continue that legacy and not become a ninja that is only powerful because of the demon sealed inside him. Hiruzen stated and Jiraiya nodded. No problem, with the training regimen I have picked out, Naruto will crush everyone in the finals regardless of who he faces. Though I would like your permission to recruit some others to help with his training is needed since there are a few things even I can't help him with and if something pressing comes up, I want him to have someone to help him until I get back. Jiraiya informed then requested and Hiruzen nodded. Do as you please, Jiraiya, anyone is free to train Naruto so long as there is no conflict of interest and it doesn't interfere in their normal duties. Hiruzen stated making Jiraiya nod before he left to check in on some people he knew could help push Naruto in the right direction. Hiruzen merely leaned back smoking his pipe while thinking on the blonde bundle of energy that was Naruto Uzumaki. If it wasn't for the fact he had to be impartial and didn't have time, he'd contribute to helping Naruto with his training. Sighing slightly, he turned back to the last few pieces of paperwork that he needed to handle for the day. Day 2 of the training month. Naruto stretched at the training ground waiting for his godfather, Sensei, to arrive and was surprised when he did a few moments later with Kurenai in tow. Ah, good, you're here. Jiraiya stated as he walked up to him with Kurenai, who seemed to be analyzing Naruto much more than she had done in the past. I've worked out some training with Kurenai-san here as well as my guy. However, any other training won't take place till the second week as I want to drill you in chakra control exercises as well as finding your elemental affinity and getting your schedule set up for the following 3 weeks. Kurenai here can help you with chakra control as she has to have near perfect control to use her variety of genjutsu. She'll also be helping you with breaking, escaping, and even casting genjutsu since there are some genjutsu that just require you to overwhelm your opponent's chakra, which you can do easily. Jiraiya informed making Naruto nod before thanking Kurenai, who merely smiled and nodded. Jiraiya then produced a slip of paper. Okay, what you've gotta do is channel chakra into this paper and the results will tell us your affinity. Depending on the results, I can train you or find someone who can train you in your affinity since, while I know the basic steps for each affinity, it's always better to have someone who's done what you'll be doing. Jiraiya stated handing Naruto the paper and waited for the results. Said results were surprising since the paper was cut into confetti with a majority of the pieces becoming soaked and the rest crumpling up. Jiraiya and Kurenai were of course stunned since it was extremely rare for a person to have 3 affinities right off the bat. Jiraiya was handling it better since he knew Minato was a wind user with a minor in water, Kushina was a water user with a minor in lightning, and he could only assume that the small trickle of chakra from the Kyuubi had slowly formed a minor connection to the 3 or it could have been due to the fox's chakra circulating inside Kushina while she was pregnant with Naruto. Kyuubi was known to cause storms, hurricanes, and typhoons with a swish of its tails and those bloodline elements were made of combinations of water, lightning, and wind. While normally a child took after the parent with the more dominant genes or whoever the child took after the most, that wasn't the case with Naruto since anyone who actually paid attention could see Naruto was a blend of both Minato and Kushina. Naruto had his father's hair, build, and eyes sure, but his face, personality, and overall way of doing things was clearly Kushina. He broke from his inner musings as Naruto merely raised an eyebrow and looked at Jiraiya. Well then, looks like you have a high affinity for wind with a lesser for water and lightning. Under normal circumstances I would try to have you learn all 3, but for this month we'll focus on the wind affinity since it will be the easier of the 3. If you show good progression in that, then I'll be able to help you with the other 2. Jiraiya informed and Naruto nodded since he had no idea how the affinities worked. Good, now I need to go talk to someone that I know could help you with the wind affinity. While I'm gone, Kurenai here will begin your work with chakra control and genjutsu and I expect you to be doing the work and not complain about getting cool jutsu. Your parents and all the Hokage always ensured they had full control of their chakra before they started worrying about using jutsu. Even then, they never focused on flashy moves over what they could use for a variety of situations. A well-used substitution can be just as effective as any offensive jutsu. Jiraiya stayed making Naruto frown, but he nodded nonetheless. Jiraiya knew fully well that basic jutsu could be lethal since he had seen it with Sasuke's mother, Makoto, who made a name for herself using only shunshin, clones, and substitution. She'd use shunshin combined with substitution to move clones around confusing enemies and even substituted with enemies so they ended up killing each other while she killed others. She never even used her Sharingan to fight even after she unlocked it fully. Shaking those thoughts away, Jiraiya nodded to Kurenai before leaving in a shunshin. This left Naruto and Kurenai alone in the training ground, so what should I do first, Kurenai-san? Naruto asked, looking around as Kurenai was just looking at him. Before that, Naruto, I have something I need to discuss with you while Jiraiya isn't here. Kurenai stated, moving toward Naruto, who looked at her and then blushed seeing how close she was. And what would that be? Naruto asked, making Kurenai smile as she pushed her chest out a bit. Well, I'm sure you recall how Neji treated Hinata in the prelims, correct? Kurenai asked and then smiled slightly as Naruto stopped blushing and grew both serious and angry. Kurenai continued when he nodded, well, I happen to care about Hinata as if she was my daughter and I'm pissed at what Neji did. However, there's nothing that can be done due to the rules and vouchers signed at the Forest of Death. Kurenai stated and Naruto nodded. Okay, and what does that have to do with me? Naruto asked and Kurenai smiled. Simple, while I can't do anything, you are not barred from such an action. Kurenai stated, making Naruto raise his eyebrows. Yes, with you as his opponent he can pay, though Hinata still wants to have him forgiven because she loves her family. With Jiraiya and others training you besides myself, your chances of beating Neji are practically guaranteed and you most likely won't break a sweat doing it. Hence why I wish to offer you a deal. Kurenai stated, making Naruto raise an eyebrow. A deal? He asked before Kurenai nodded and stood. Naruto blushed again as she pulled her dress down, revealing her perky and hardened nipples and then up, showing her scarlet thong covered. If you break Neji, and I mean doing everything you can to hurt him short of crippling or killing him, then you can have me. I will sign myself over to you as your servant, slave, concubine, whore, or whatever you want to call it. If you do this for me and hurt Neji for what he did to Hinata and knows never to do it again, then you can have me till the day one of us dies. Kurenai stated, moving her thong to show her pink. That is. Naruto stammered before he slapped himself. I would have done that from the start, you don't have to do this. Naruto stated, making Kurenai smile more. I know, but you would have simply fought him till he lost, but I want you to do more than that. I want you to beat him, hurt him, maim him, and anything else except cripple him or kill him, since I know Hinata will never forgive that. I want you to deliver a wrath upon him that not the Hokage, Hyuga clan, Fire Daimyo, or even Kami himself could stop from happening, to make sure he knows never to try to kill Hinata again. Kurenai stated with passion, anger, and ambition in her voice. Even still, I don't think you need to do this. Naruto stated before he blushed as Kurenai leaned in and kissed his lips. The blush was due to both the kiss and his front row view of her. I know, but first off, this is my way of thanking you and giving you an extra incentive. Second, you're a nice boy and will no doubt do many great things, which means I also benefit. Third, despite what I am offering, you're still resisting the offer, and even just looking at my chest is being avoided by you as you look at my face whenever one of us is speaking. Fourth, you'll also be helping me. She stated, making him raise an eyebrow at the last item. I'm tired of being hounded by dozens of men who just want to sleep with me and then brag about it. Most men don't respect kunoichi and think all we do is sleep with individuals before assassinating them. There's also the fact my apartment complex has been full of pigs, perverts, and assholes, so that's a problem. I'm fully prepared to serve you with my body if it is required, but that's mainly due to the fact I know you won't brag about it to every person willing to listen. You won't try anything if I say no, you're not going to treat me like some toy, and you won't make me sleep like some kind of animal or dress me as a whore to parade around. Kurenai stated, making Naruto blanch at the idea. Hell no, that'd make me no better than that Gato asshole in Wave, and I sure as hell will never become like him. Naruto shouted, making Kurenai smile. Kurenai then stood and covered herself again. So we have an agreement then? She asked, making Naruto blink before blushing again. I guess, if that's what you want. Naruto stated, making her smile before she kissed his cheek before standing and getting down to business. Good, now we'll start with different chakra control exercises. Once I see which are either easy or hard for you to do, I'll have you work on the easiest methods, since they will help you get your control progressively better till the harder ones are manageable. Kurenai instructed, making Naruto nod. With Jiraiya. Jiraiya was currently with one Asuma Sarutobi, the only confirmed wind user left in Konoha besides Naruto, and was currently discussing some things with him. Forgive me, Jiraiya-sama, but wouldn't this be a conflict of interest? At the very least negligence, since I do need to help Shikamaru, even if I can only seem to help him with strategy and planning since he's not willing to do much else. Asuma asked, then added, making Jiraiya shake his head. It's only a conflict of interest if you actively discuss Shikamaru's skills, training, or anything involving what he'd use in the exams, and same goes with Naruto's to Shikamaru. As for negligence, it would do Naruto good to try and learn some strategy by playing Shikamaru. Add in his shadow clones and you could have Shikamaru playing multiple opponents, which would make him have to think even faster and worry about different opponents at once. Jiraiya stated, making Asuma nod a bit. Okay, and with his clones I can work with him on his nature transformation while he plays Shikamaru, and the same could be said for, oh my god. Asuma stated before widening his eyes in realization, making Jiraiya nod. The kid can make hundreds of clones without breaking a sweat, and all that memory accumulation means he can build up months if not years of training within this 1 month, especially when he's motivated. Jiraiya stated with a smirk, and Asuma merely shook his head. Damn, kid's gonna be stronger than us all by the time he's 16. Asuma stated, suddenly feeling old, while the two shared a laugh. So we got a deal? Jiraiya asked, and Asuma nodded. A chance to help train possibly the strongest ninja since the time of Madara and Hashirama. Sure, plus it would do Shikamaru good to play against someone other than me and his father. Asuma stated with a smirk, and Jiraiya nodded. Alright, I'll get together with you and the others. I plan to have help train Naruto, since I can guess how many other teachers have just decided to wash their hands of him in the academy, so he may need some extra help. Jiraiya stated, and Asuma nodded with a chuckle. If it were any other kid, I'd say you were trying to work him to death. However, considering his boundless energy and massive reserves, I think it would be easy to whip him into shape. We just have to get through his impatience and need to be doing something constantly. Asuma stated with a chuckle, making Jiraiya nod and chuckle as well. I have to ask though, do you plan on training him with it? Asuma asked, wanting to know ahead of time so he could have others stand down if the chakra from Kyuubi was ever felt. No, aside from the fact he's too inexperienced to truly use it, circumstances have made it clear to both myself and Sensei that it wouldn't be wise. Konoha has never had to rely on Jinchuriki, and we shouldn't start, especially with the fact there are rumors about a group looking to find and possibly collect all the Biju for themselves. This leads Sensei and I to believe they have to have a means or plan for each Biju to bring them down and capture them. Jiraiya stated, knowing Asuma would hear about this sooner or later from Hiruzen, since Asuma was technically an Anbu, he just wasn't given the rank due to the fact he already had a huge reputation after guarding the Fire Daimyo and being Hiruzen's son. Asuma nodded with a frown. That just means I have to train the kid into the ground even harder to make sure his skills are up to par with everything that he'll be facing. Asuma stated, making Jiraiya laugh. He'd probably want that of you regardless. The kid is motivated to train, he just needs the guidance to understand why he needs to be doing the training. Something I'm sure Kakashi neglected entirely. Jiraiya stated before becoming angered at the end, and Asuma frowned. We all warned him, Jiraiya, but he wouldn't listen. He was too obsessed with training Sasuke to care about his other students at times, and he had no faith in Sakura or Naruto's abilities to be ninja. Asuma stated, and Jiraiya nodded. I know, Kakashi has already been handled, and depending on how his two students do in the finals will result in his punishment. Considering what I've been setting up for Naruto, Kakashi will get what is coming to him, and hard. Jiraiya stated in a no-nonsense tone, and Asuma nodded, already guessing how much shit Kakashi will be in when his screw-up is shown. Back with Naruto. Naruto was currently standing upside down on a tree branch with a leaf stuck to his forehead, while several clones were spinning multiple leaves on their palms. Another group was water walking, another was running up and down trees, and still another group was spinning kunai on their fingertips. Kurenai knew fully well that shadow clones couldn't be used as effectively for chakra control, or rather she knew that was the belief many had. Because he distributed his chakra evenly, the clones would then work on controlling their smaller amount of chakra, then the combined control would go back to the original, the overall control would increase as time went on. It wasn't as fast as other training could be with shadow clones, but it was still faster than doing the exercises normally. If nothing else, his skill doing the exercise would increase, thus allowing him to use the exercises easier. If he could use the exercises easier, then he could maintain his control better and begin reining in all that chakra he had. In another hour, Kurenai planned to have him try some different genjutsu to see what his level of control fully was and then go from there. She broke from her musings as Jiraiya returned. How's he doing? Jiraiya asked, seeing the different clones doing exercises. Better. He struggled with a couple, but he had water walking down on his first try. The kunai spinning is also going better, while I increased the difficulty of the leaf spinning and then combined the leaf sticking and tree climbing exercises for him. Kurenai stated, making Jiraiya nod, since if this was kept up then he'd have enough control to handle the Rasengan and other jutsu easily before the month was out. Good, I'll leave him with you today to keep this up along with any genjutsu training you think he's ready for. I need to get some supplies and some information that I can use to help him both in his physical training and with his chakra control. I don't know how long it will take, but it shouldn't be any longer than a good portion of today. Jiraiya stated, and Kurenai nodded. I'm not working with Shino on anything until next week, since he wants to get better control of his bugs by learning with his father and clan. Even then we are only working on helping his bugs be better immune to genjutsu and me helping him achieve better chakra control. Kurenai stated, while Jiraiya held back a frown, since from what he was hearing, many of the clan heirs only knew their clan techniques and knew nothing outside of it. If another war broke out then they'd get slaughtered, since numerous shinobi had found ways to counteract the skills each clan possessed and kill said clan members. Hopefully them seeing Naruto's soon-to-be wide arsenal of skills would motivate them to branch out. Day 3 of training. Naruto stood in front of Jiraiya again, only this time without his jacket and shirt, while more of his clones were doing the chakra exercises. Jiraiya was sitting right now while having some ink and brushes handy along with some armbands, leg bands, and a waistband. Alright, I'm going need you to stay still while I do this. The seals I'm going to put on you will help with your training and with your control. The first seal are gravity seals, which will make your body feel heavier the higher the setting, while the second seal will lock your chakra to your body and strength. What this means is if you don't have your physical power balanced with your chakra completely, then you'll not be able to move. This will increase your concentration and how well you regulate your chakra. Granted, I'm not making it as strict as it should be since you have some work to do before your physical power is as good as your chakra, but it will still work. On top of that, you'll also be wearing these bands that have weight seals on them to push your body even further. Jiraiya stated as he began drawing the seals onto Naruto, who was doing his best to wait patiently till Jiraiya was done. Naruto then put the bands on just as Jiraiya activated the seals, making him grunt as his arms and legs locked together and he fell face first in the ground with a loud thud. The gravity seals are set at ×3 gravity and the weight seals are set at 100 pounds apiece. Since muscles get stronger through tearing and healing, you can adapt to this much faster thanks to the QB healing you, meaning you can do this even faster than the other training regiments with the clones. Jiraiya stated before going over to a tree, sat down, and pulled out a few scrolls. Once you can move, give me 200 push-ups, sit-ups, squats, punches for each arm, kicks for each leg, laps around the training field, and then laps running up and down a tree. Jiraiya stated causally as he began reading and ignoring the string of curses his new student was spewing at him. A few hours later had Jiraiya looking up and widened his eyes slightly to see Naruto doing the punches while drenched in sweat. He also noticed a couple bottles of water empty beside him and was glad his student wasn't so hard-headed that he ignored his body's needs. Jiraiya mused that if he could get the physical items done by lunch, then he'd treat the kid to ramen even if it would probably break his wallet. Sure, Naruto needed to eat other things, but if he was going to put this much effort and hard work into training, then Jiraiya could let the kid have his favorite food, even if it wasn't as healthy as it could be. Then again, there was veggie ramen as well as low-salt ramen, so that could be a way to start getting him to eat better. Shaking those thoughts away, Jiraiya returned to his reading concerning his various reports from spies, favors, and informants. The information concerning Suna mobilizing ninja was not something he liked since he knew the Wind Daimyo was slowly strangling the village economically. It was only worse based on the fact that Orochimaru was here, which meant that his former teammate could have swayed Suna to attacking Konoha since they were taking the Wind Daimyo's missions rather than Suna. Adding in the fact that Suna's own Jinchuriki was here and it clear that Konoha needed to expect trouble. Jiraiya sighed slightly since he'd have to look into this personally, which meant he'd have to change up his plans for training Naruto and maybe have the others start pitching in sooner rather than later. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing, he just didn't want the kid feeling like he was being ditched again. He'd explain it to Naruto after the kid finished his physical exercises. Lunchtime, Jiraiya could honestly say he hadn't been too surprised by any of his students over his years teaching. Sure, Minato's ingenuity in creating his 2AS rank jutsu was astounding, but it was a small mention compared to the lack of surprise throughout his training otherwise. Naruto, however, Naruto had gone through the entire training regiment he had given him to help adapt to the change on his body. A regiment that Jiraiya hadn't honestly thought he'd complete, let alone by lunch. Yet, not only did he complete it, but he had actually added to it by adding handstand flips, backflips, front flips, cartwheels, and tree hopping to help ensure his agility matched his new weight and restriction. The tree hopping was the most impressive since to do it one usually used a burst of chakra from the feet, which could throw off the balance of physical power and chakra. Right now said blonde was eating the veggie ramen that Jiraiya had a clone pick up. It took some doing, but Naruto relented after Jiraiya explained that it was due to Kyuubi's chakra was fixing the issues his body was receiving, that Naruto's body wasn't weaker than it was. This in turn slowed down any healing he would have received when in combat, and eventually his body would have built up a tolerance and then his body would feel the aftereffects. He also played to his ego with the fact that the fourth Hokage always talked about eating properly to keep in shape and ensure they were in top fighting condition. Of course, as soon as Naruto started eating it, he found he actually enjoyed it. He still liked pork ramen more, which Jiraiya could understand. Jiraiya had told him he didn't have to give up ramen entirely, he just shouldn't eat it for every meal, otherwise he risked his health, and at the very least he needed to add fruit and vegetables when eating ramen. However, now came the discussion of Jiraiya having to leave for a few days. Naruto, some things have come up and I'm going to have leave for a few days. Jiraiya stated before holding his hands up when Naruto was about to protest, I'm not ditching you, Kurenai and some other people I've talked to are going to cycle through teaching you as it's needed, and it will all go through the Hokage. Each day you'll go to his office and he'll have the individual in charge for that day take you to train until I come back, and then I'll join the cycle again. I wouldn't leave if it wasn't urgent and vital for the village, Naruto. I may have my own quirks and laziness, but never when it came to training students. Jiraiya explained and defended, making Naruto pause before finally nodding. Good, now I've asked the Hokage to oversee you meeting your different teachers each day as well as who you will see if one is indisposed for whatever reason. Jiraiya stated, making Naruto nod before Jiraiya grew serious. Now, I don't want to hear one word about you giving any teacher. I've prepared a hard time. They all know what they are doing, but if it feels ridiculous at any point, ask the Hokage about it so he can confirm if it's actually helping or not. Jiraiya stated, making Naruto nod before the two continued eating. Day 4. Hokage Tower. Naruto was sitting in the Hokage's office waiting for his first instructor to come and get him. As he waited, he was idly talking with Hiruzen, who was doing paperwork at a relaxed pace. Jiraiya had left early that morning and left Naruto a note telling him that if he did well while he was away, then Jiraiya would have a surprise for him when he got back. Naruto didn't really need the motivation since he planned to put everything into the training he'd be getting, he just hoped it was actual training and not just busy work. He broke from his thoughts as the door was knocked on before Hiruzen gave permission to enter and Ibiki Morino entered. Naruto blinked owlishly, wondering just what kind of training he was going to get. Ah, Ibiki, good, you're on time. Naruto, Ibiki will be training you in some various items including reading an opponent, getting into their head, increasing your knowledge base, and some other things to make you a more competent shinobi. Hiruzen stated, knowing Ibiki could also help Naruto heal a bit from the emotional and mental wounds the village had inflicted on him over the years. Ibiki merely looked at Naruto, who only looked back with no fear or trepidation, just curiosity. Ibiki then smirked, you're gonna do fine, kid, but I don't hold hands and I don't treat anyone with kid gloves, got it? Ibiki stated before all but growling at the end and respected the fire in the blonde's eyes, showing he was ready to learn and break himself to do it. Yes sir, Mr. Ibiki sir. Naruto stated with a mock salute, making Ibiki and the hidden Anbu snort while Hiruzen chuckled. Well Naruto, are there any questions before I turn you over to Ibiki's care? Hiruzen asked and Naruto frowned a moment. Well, just one, but it's not about my training. Naruto stated and Hiruzen chuckled. No, I'm not going to let you wear the hat. Hiruzen stated with the chuckle, only to be surprised when Naruto shook his head. No, that wasn't what I was going to ask. Naruto stated, wondering how he should ask his question. Then what is it? Ibiki asked, genuinely interested in the question. Well, you two have piles of paperwork due to your positions, right? Naruto asked and they nodded. Well, my question is, why don't you guys ever use shadow clones or elemental clones to help you do it? You guys could get hours worth of paperwork done in minutes. Naruto stated, making the two just look at him with a dead silence in the room. Even the Anbu were beyond their normal silence. Naruto was getting worried he said something wrong when he was engulfed in a hug by Hiruzen, who was crying, thank you. Hiruzen shouted in happiness while Ibiki was banging his head against a wall, calling himself a moron. Naruto was almost certain the Anbu were doing the same thing too. Naruto was a little disturbed at the fact the Hokage was hugging him and crying tears of happiness while doing so. Luckily he didn't have to dwell on it much because Ibiki spoke up, yes well, I'll be taking him now, Hokage-sama. Ibiki stated before leading Naruto outside the office. Hiruzen sat down and had a grin on his face as he made a few clones and chuckled as he idly heard Ibiki asking Naruto if he could teach him the shadow clone jutsu, both for paperwork and for possible interrogation methods. Hiruzen merely chuckled, still in his early life and already he's smarter than every cage that's existed and even the Nara clan members. I can only imagine what he'll be like when older and receiving proper training and guidance. Hiruzen and his clones chuckled at the thought before dividing the piles of paperwork up, making the stacks much more manageable. The Anbu were also wondering if the kid or Hokage could possibly teach them the shadow clone jutsu, since not only would missions be easier, but the reports would be easier to write too. With Naruto, Ibiki took him to the local shinobi library and began grabbing books from various shelves on various subjects including nature transformation, basic field medicine, plants used for medicine and poison, psychiatry, psychology, nerves in the human body, and more. Ibiki knew he couldn't add much to Naruto's training till he got some things ready, so he decided to use his first day as a foundation building. He could get the groundwork for his future lessons and the others' lessons to make it easier to build up his training regiment. By the end of it, he had close to 100 books and set them down on a desk before putting Naruto at it. Now, I want you to read every single one of these books. I don't care if you use shadow clones or not, but I want you to read these and then I'm going to quiz you on them. If you fail, you'll have to read them all over again and again until you pass. Ibiki stated, having been informed that Kurenai told Naruto about the shadow clones transferring memories when they dispersed and helping with training. Naruto grimaced since he didn't like reading much. Alright, but Jiraiya's sensei mentioned once, I'm more of a practical learner than a theoretical one. Naruto stated, making Ibiki smirk since he knew a few people like that. I know, but trust me, having a handle on this information can help you in a lot of situations. Plus the nature transformation book will help you get a grasp on things for when you start elemental training. My old teammates were the same way with learning and it took some time, but they started becoming more into reading books if for no other reason than it gave them ideas for new attacks and methods of fighting. Ibiki stated, making Naruto nod a bit before he quickly called a clone for each book and took one himself and began reading. Ibiki was about to go look up some old report books since he wanted to check some information on a few places and people, but paused as a thought occurred to him. Naruto, don't dispel all your clones at once. The backlash of information will either cause you to pass out or at the least give you a serious migraine. Ibiki stated, making the Naruto's nod before Ibiki went looking for the items he wanted. Hours later, Ibiki had been patient with Naruto, knowing that when dealing with an impatient person, being impatient was not the way to go. He had done well the first quiz in that he got 12 questions right before he had to read again. By the end of it, Naruto only had to read the books 3 times before he got through the quiz completely. It was actually impressive, since most would need to read all those books 4 or even 5 times before they could get through half the questions. He was also pleased to see Naruto send a few clones to look for more books to read while Naruto himself stayed with Ibiki. Alright, you've got a grasp of the different basic knowledges and some of the advanced, now it's time for some practical work. Ibiki stated before he produced a stack of 5 folders. These are reports and analyses on 5 different ninja within the village that I know for a fact that you've met. Ibiki stated, and Naruto frowned. But just because I've met them doesn't mean I know them well enough to know who this is. Naruto stated, and Ibiki smirked. Tough. In the field you can't get to know your opponents through talking casually and the like, you'll have to analyze their behavior, speech patterns, actions, and anything else you can see, hear, feel, and so on. At the best of times we can have a basic profile of an enemy and you will have to go off of that alone, such as any entries in the bingo books. Being able to get inside your opponent's head, knowing what they will do before even they do, being able to essentially control your opponent by making them act how you want them to, all of this can be used to your advantage. Ibiki stated, and Naruto nodded slowly. Good. Now, your job is to read through and see if you can decipher who each one is and then defend your choice against me. I will do everything I can to convince you that you're wrong, even if I know for a fact that you are right. You have to get the argument in your favor and stay there. Ibiki stated, and Naruto nodded before taking one of the folders and began reading it. Subject exhibits a wild personality to cover pain from a betrayal. Regularly acts wild, crazy, and impulsive to cover the pain of loneliness, and wears clothing that draws attention whether negative or positive. Competent in shinobi work. Subject tends to enjoy work a bit more than usually seen, and if not for the few friends the subject has, it could be a sign of mentally unraveling. That was part of the profile, as Naruto kept reading while mentally going over who he could have met that fit this profile. He noted that he fit a part of it, but the only person he could even remotely think of that fit this kind of thing was second Proctor Anko Mitarashi. He didn't know much about her, but if his read from this profile was correct, then he and her were similar in a few ways. Setting aside the current folder, he went to the next and read it over. Ibiki suppressed a smirk at that, since it meant Naruto had an idea of who was in that first file, but wanted to read the others to help raise his chances of being right. Identifying any of the folders was one less person he had to consider for the others. The drawback was that if he was wrong on any of them, then he'd discount someone who very well could fit perfectly. Ibiki was honestly curious about how he'd do. Day 5. Naruto sat in the Hokage's office waiting for his next teacher to come in. Yesterday had been eventful, since Naruto had gotten into some heated arguments with Ibiki over who the first 4 profiles belonged to: Anko, Guy, Hiruzen, and Kurenai. The biggest came when Naruto argued that the last file was Ibiki's own, and Ibiki stood his ground in the argument to the point of threatening Naruto with being disqualified from the Chunin exams and being sent back to the academy if he didn't stop. However, Naruto persevered and called his bluff, since he'd need the Hokage's approval for that, and Naruto hadn't done anything wrong and had done just as he was instructed to. Consequences he damned. Ibiki could honestly say he'd never had anyone tell him to go himself and actually mean it entirely. It had made him laugh when he told Naruto he had passed another test, since he couldn't just go about being told he is wrong and just accepting it and seeing through deception, no matter how much it could be risky to disbelieve it. Ibiki did warn about doing such a thing to the Hokage, but Naruto also had to understand even people in a position of power can be wrong. However, proving them wrong could be just as dangerous as letting them simply be wrong. If lives were endangered, then he should speak up, but he had to be ready to accept the consequences of such an action. Naruto understood, and from there Ibiki began picking his brain on different ways to torture someone. He didn't like doing it, but there were missions where interrogation was needed and not planned. Naruto recalled the demon brothers and even the 2 thugs that went to kidnap Tsunami. If he had interrogated the latter 2, then he could have learned that Gato was going to betray Zabuza, and thus he and Haku could have lived. Naruto shook those depressing thoughts away, since it wasn't going to do him or anyone else any good to dwell in the past. Who would voluntarily do that? A certain Cyclops, large gambler, fate-believing asshole, and half of Iowa suddenly sneezed violently while wondering who was talking about them. Anyway, Naruto had helped Ibiki as much as he could, including some simple things that Ibiki was surprised they had overlooked. By the end of it, Ibiki had offered him a place in the TI department if he ever wanted to vent or maybe even improve his psychological and interrogation skills. Ibiki did inform him he'd be getting a practical lesson in using it once he cleared some things with the Hokage. Naruto wasn't sure if he should be excited or worried about testing out these kinds of skills. At the here and now, he broke from his musings as the door opened and in walked Asuma Sarutobi. Hey dad, I'm here for the kid to train. Asuma stated to Hiruzen, who nodded and motioned Naruto to go with him. Naruto complied and followed Asuma as they went to the Nara household and found Shikamaru laying back looking at the clouds while 3 shogi boards were set up near him. When they got close, Shikamaru looked to them and raised an eyebrow at seeing Naruto. "Hey Naruto, hey Asuma-sensei, what's up?" Shikamaru asked with a yawn, making the two chuckle. "Well, I'm helping Naruto with some training during the month and figured it would do you both some good if you and he played shogi together. Naruto needs to learn some patience and strategy while you could use a new opponent, especially one that is unpredictable like Naruto. So while I'm training him via his clones, you'll be playing him in 2 of his clones as it will let you learn to keep multiple strategies in play and beat more than one enemy at once." Asuma stated, making Shikamaru look surprised while Naruto merely shrugged and made a batch of 102 clones. This surprised Asuma while shocking Shikamaru. This is the same Naruto that couldn't make 2 normal clones. Shikamaru thought incredulously since he could tell that the clones Naruto used weren't normal ones. That was evidenced against Kiba when the clones could actually hit him and not just phase through him. He decided not to dwell on it too much since it would prove troublesome, and Naruto normally was troublesome enough without adding more to it. Asuma merely shook his head in amusement. "Well, come on you lot, let's get to work." Asuma stated as he led 100 clones to a different area to train in wind release. Naruto and the 2 remaining clones shrugged before each sat at a different board with Shikamaru in the middle of the 3 with one on his left, one on his right, and one in front of him. "You'll have to help me out a little at first, I've never played," Naruto stated, making Shikamaru shrug before they started playing. With Asuma was standing by watching the clones begin the first exercise of the wind affinity, cutting leaves with their chakra. After he had shown what the primary attribute for wind was, via coating one of his trenching knives in wind chakra and then letting it cut through a boulder and 2 trees, Asuma began explaining that it was like splitting your chakra in half and then grinding the 2 halves together to make a refined sharpened edge. After that, he had them pluck leaves from a nearby tree and get to work cutting them with his chakra. Asuma then told him he was to continue doing so until he could cut the leaf in half in an instant, since in combat he wasn't going to have time to focus and try to make the chakra begin doing what he wanted. He needed to have it get to what he wanted, needed quickly and effectively, which meant cutting the leaf instantly when he made wind chakra. Naruto and his clones took the challenge to heart, and Asuma was a little surprised when the kid was already getting a cut started on the leaf after 5 minutes. He would have been very surprised if not for the fact that Naruto told him he read up on nature transformation, and then there was the sheer volume of chakra Naruto possessed made it easier for him to just hit the leaf with a great deal of chakra. More chakra meant more friction, which meant more of a cut. However, the downside was that he was using way more chakra than he needed, but that was to be expected due to his reserves versus his control. From what Jiraiya informed him, both he and Kurenai were working on that problem right now, and his control was better than it was since he was easily doing genin level exercises. The reason for that being a sign of progress is because genin exercises were designed for small reserves while the higher level ones were for larger pools of chakra or to add even further refinement. Naruto could do the Jonin and Anbu exercises due to his astounding reserves, thus a genin level 1 was like trying to direct a raging torrent of water with a pebble. The added benefit of the nature exercises was that they were a form of chakra exercises in themselves. So the more progress Naruto made on the leaf cutting exercise and the other ones, the better control he'd have overall. This kid, he's going to be deadly and powerful when he's older. If he can do this kind of training level now, then I can only imagine what he'll be doing once he gets his chakra under control and grows up a bit more. Asuma thought, knowing full well that Naruto's biggest limitation right now was his lack of control, and it was a limitation that was quickly being taken care of like it should have been when Kakashi was teaching him. There was also the fact Naruto was still growing and had yet to hit full maturity. When he reached adulthood, his chakra and skill could surpass the first Hokage when he was in his prime. He idly wondered when Jiraiya would start teaching him jutsu, since Asuma could easily add onto it with quite a few wind jutsu. Shaking those thoughts away for later, he decided to voice something to Naruto. "Naruto," he called, making the 100 blondes look at him. "When you've each cut a leaf, come to me and wait for permission before dispelling. I don't want the original to pass out from exhaustion because groups of you decided to dispel when finished. I'll have you each dispelling at intervals so the backlash won't hit as hard for you or the original." Asuma stated, making them nod. "Yes sir," they chorused before going back to work, making Asuma chuckle a bit. He idly wondered how Shikamaru was doing with Naruto. With said lazy genius, Shikamaru could honestly say that Naruto was indeed every bit as troublesome as he thought he was. He had gotten the hang of the game quickly, though his strategy left much to be desired at the beginning. The troublesome thing, despite Shikamaru liking this bit of troublesome, was Naruto would do moves that he hadn't calculated at all and it made no sense. However, it always threw Shikamaru's game plan off and he had to reorganize and replan almost every turn. It was made only worse by the fact he had to handle 3 of the same opponent, all doing things different from each other and making him constantly have to keep multiple plans going at once for just a simple game. He quickly realized why Asuma wanted him to play Naruto. If he could get this frustrated and confused in a game against an opponent like Naruto, then how quickly could he lose his cool in actual battle? There was also the fact having to keep readjusting his plans. Almost every move made him think on his feet faster and helped adjust against multiple enemies. Especially when he's facing 3 opponents who don't fight the same way. He knew for a fact his father would even have a hard time handling 3 Narutos playing him at once since they all played differently despite being the same person. This led to the conclusion that the shadow clones could think independently, and while the original had decided on one course of action, the other 2 had decided differently. He'd have to ask his dad about the shadow clone jutsu since it seemed way too advanced for Naruto to have just learned it without some kind of teacher, but neither Sasuke nor Sakura could use it, so that begged the question of where did Naruto learn it. He shook those thoughts away since he couldn't afford to get distracted. Naruto had already almost checkmated him 3 times and was only getting better the more games they played. It was both annoying and fun since he actually had to try to win instead of just doing the normal sluggish playing that he did against Asuma when they played. The 2-4 were so wrapped up in playing, both to win and for enjoyment, that they failed to notice how much time was going by. There was no real indicator for them other than Naruto and his clones occasionally twitching from one of the other clones dispelling since they were either done or out of chakra. They were informed though, when Choji came over. Hey Skika, want to get some lunch? Choji asked before seeing Naruto. Oh hey Naruto, you can come too. Choji stated, waving while Naruto waved back before taking his turn. Choji, knowing that games Shikamaru played didn't usually take long, sat down on the side and merely watched. He was actually surprised to see Shikamaru lost quite a few pieces along with Naruto since Shikamaru usually owned anyone besides his dad at shogi. It took another 10 minutes before the 3 games were over. Shikamaru had won, but any observant person would see that it wasn't a hands-down victory but a hard-fought one. With that said and done though, Naruto had his 2 clones pop and then waited a moment before some of his other clones popped. Asuma will be here in a minute, he's just managing my clones into groups to dispel before coming here. Naruto stated, making Shikamaru shrug and Choji to be confused. Asuma's helping me with some training for the month, so I sent a batch of clones with him to train while I played Shikamaru. Naruto elaborated, making Choji blink. What good does sending the clones do? Choji asked and Naruto smiled. Because the shadow clones are solid, whatever they learn or experience I get the memories of. Thus using them I can cut training time down quite a bit depending on how many clones I have doing the training. Naruto explained, making them widen their eyes. Wow, that sounds handy. Do you think you could teach me? Choji asked and Naruto frowned while scratching his head. I can't teach you one version because according to another teacher it takes way too much chakra for the normal person, even the Hokage couldn't use it. The other I might be able to, but it would be draining since apparently you need Jonin level reserves to make even one. I'm just lucky since I naturally have a ton of chakra in me, which I'm told comes from being an Uzumaki. Naruto explained with a shrug, making Choji deflate slightly while Shikamaru was curious now. How can someone still in their teens have that much chakra? If it takes Jonin reserves to make one and Naruto can easily make more than 100, he'd have to have more chakra than a good portion of the Konoha shinobi roster put together. Shikamaru thought before Asuma entered the clearing. So let me guess, barbecue. Asuma stated and chuckled when Choji gave him a look that said, of course. As if it could be anything else. Hey Asuma, do you think Choji could learn the basic shadow clone jutsu? I was telling them why I sent clones off to train with you and Choji seemed interested. Naruto asked then explained as they walked to one of the better Akamaiki restaurants. Asuma frowned. Unfortunately, no, he can't right now. His reserves aren't high enough yet and making one could cause him to pass out along with the clone. Asuma stated, making Choji slump his head in defeat. Choji, you need to find a training method that helps you and not the one that helps Naruto. While I'll admit, using shadow clones to train can be useful, if you can't make enough of them to really matter then you're just tiring yourself out. What Naruto may have forgotten to mention or you failed to realize is that all the exhaustion, stress, pain, hunger, thirst, and other negative things get sent back to the user as well. Naruto can take it better since he has stamina and endurance in spades, since as you've seen he can outlast and outrun Anbu when needed. If Naruto wasn't the way he was, no one would let him train like he is. Asuma explained and reasoned, making Choji frown and nod. Okay, though still it would be cool to do that even if it's just for during really hard training. Being able to cut the time down for it would be awesome. Though I think Shikamaru would just end up playing shogi with his clones or watching the clouds with someone who can sympathize with him fully. Choji stages with a chuckle while Shikamaru honestly didn't think that idea was all bad. He'd never do it, of course. It'd be too much work to get his reserves high enough that he could make a clone. Arriving at the restaurant, the 4 saw Ino already at a table relaxing and raised her eyebrow at seeing Naruto. Naruto. What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be with your own sensei and teammates? Ino asked and Naruto shrugged. Kakashi ditched me and Sakura to train Sasuke, so I found a different teacher, and I haven't seen or heard from Sakura since the end of the prelims, so I assumed she was busy with her parents or hanging out with you. My other teacher had to handle a mission, so he asked a couple others to help out. Today was Asuma's turn, so I trained with him while playing Shikamaru in shogi by using shadow clones. Naruto stated as they sat down. Isn't that a conflict of interest or cheating? Ino asked with her eyes narrowed and Naruto shook his head before Asuma could answer. No, it's only a conflict of interest if Asuma tells me or Shikamaru what the other is training in. And it's only cheating if I was spying or Shikamaru was spying on the training. Since I was technically with Shikamaru helping the both of us with strategy and patience and Asuma isn't telling either of us what the other is doing when we aren't together, there's no issue. If Shikamaru or I choose to tell the other what we are training in, then it's our own fault if it is used against us later. Naruto stated calmly as he looked at the menu making the four blink at his intelligent and thought-out answer. There's also the fact it's unlikely Shikamaru and I will end up fighting each other anyway, so there's no real advantage to knowing. Naruto stated making Choji and Ino raise their eyebrows in curiosity. Why's that? Choji asked and Naruto chuckled. Because for me to be in a position to face Shikamaru, I have to beat Neji, which I will, and then beat either Sasuke or Gaara. Though fighting Gaara is more likely because of Kakashi. For Shikamaru to be in a position to fight me, he'd have to beat either Temari or Dosu and then beat either Kankuro or Shino. Since Shikamaru isn't that highly motivated, my guess is he'll have his first opponent in a spot to be defeated and then give up. The second most likely option is he beats the first opponent just so you and others will give him a break about what he did for the month, and then give up against the next opponent. Naruto stated having improved his analytical skills by working with Ibiki and clone spamming his reading. It was also for this reason that his mind felt that he was missing something that he should have noticed but he couldn't for the life of him think of what. He then looked back at the group and saw Ino and Choji blinking owlishly at him. Wow, Naruto really has been working hard since the academy. Choji thought seeing the change in his friend since their days causing mayhem at the academy. Ino was a different matter entirely, as this really the same knucklehead that could barely get through the academy. When did he change so much? Ino thought while remembering her first surprise when he beat Kiba, granted it wasn't smooth or skillful but Sasuke's wasn't either. Her second surprise came in him being so angry over what Neji did and then even swearing a blood promise to win against him. It was both cool and kinda romantic when she thought about it. Shaking those thoughts away, they all gave their orders and just talked peacefully. As they ate, Naruto noticed Ino was barely eating anything. Ino, why aren't you actually eating? Naruto asked curiously since both Jiraiya and the health books he read stated you needed a steady amount of food and nutrients to stay healthy and train. The males groaned slightly. Don't bother Naruto, we've all tried to talk her into eating more and she won't listen. Asuma stated making Ino puff her cheeks out and glare. Well Naruto, I'm on a diet to lose some weight. She stated only for Naruto to look at her in confusion. Why, you're not fat at all and you can't get much skinnier without harming your body and taking away from how pretty you look now. Naruto stated while making Ino blush a bit at the unintentional compliment, you need to eat and keep your strength up in order to train since not eating takes away your stamina and will make your body start eating your muscle to keep the nutrient levels up. That can in turn make you vulnerable in a fight and cost you or a teammate their life. If you're worried about gaining weight then just balance it with hard work training so you'll gain muscle instead of fat. Naruto stated since it was the truth. I don't want to get bulky or fat though. Ino protested and Naruto raised an eyebrow. Have you seen any kunoichi that are bulky or fat? Naruto asked and Ino opened her mouth before closing since she really didn't see any kunoichi like that. Actually all the kunoichi she had seen all had bodies she'd kill for and assets that would make any guy's head turn. Plus they had skill and power to back up their womanly bodies instead of being scrawny or uptight like several civilian women were. See, if you're that worried about it then why don't you ask some of the veteran kunoichi how they balance food and training? Like Kurenai Yuhi, Anko Mitarashi, or even your own mother. Then you'll have someone to give you advice and help you stay in shape without starving yourself. Naruto stated making the other three males blink wondering why the hell they hadn't tried that argument. Ino frowned in thought for a few minutes before she nodded, alright, I'll do that. Thanks Naruto, she stated with a smile which Naruto returned. Asuma merely smiled and shook his head, that kid does it again. Changes someone without fully realizing what he's done. And if my eyes aren't fooling me, I think my blonde student just gained a bit of a crush on my temporary student. Asuma thought while noticing Ino still having a bit of the blush Naruto caused earlier on her face. Asuma could only hope that Ino would take her training seriously now and not be at risk when they took harder missions in the future. Day 6. Naruto was once again within the Hokage office only this time he had arrived even earlier than the previous 2 days. The reason why was because Hiruzen decided to do something to help Naruto by teaching him politics, economics, diplomacy, and some of the school subjects that Naruto was lacking in. He made a mental note to have a little sit down with the different teachers of the academy. There was a strict policy of just letting a child go through the academy knowing they were struggling with some subjects and then doing nothing to correct it. He knew the head of the academy didn't have an issue with Naruto. The woman had been there a long time including when the academy once taught the basics of sealing so she knew fully well the difference between the item sealed and the item holding said seal. Hiruzen had had many meetings where the head had showed various complaints that Hiruzen had to put down from teachers and parents wanting Naruto banned from the academy or at least from being a ninja. It was both infuriating and saddening. The sad part being there were so many stupid people in the village. Anyway, Hiruzen was doing this since thanks to Naruto's revelation about getting through paperwork, Hiruzen was more relaxed and had more free time. One would think he'd be spending time with Konohamaru, but the boy had started the academy and Hiruzen wasn't going to get in the way of that despite the temptation being there. He wasn't worried about Kono's status getting him any favors or pulled punches since he was sure the teachers knew better. Especially since he made it clear to all the instructors that if they showed favoritism towards Kono in any way, then there would be hell to pay. Back to the point though, Hiruzen could do this since it wasn't showing favoritism as Naruto wouldn't be using these skills in the finals, so there was no unfair advantage. Even if someone complained, Hiruzen could simply write it off as payment for a service Naruto performed for the Hokage and the village. It also reminded him that he had yet to pay Naruto for that, unofficial, mission in regards to him not only saving Iruka's life, but also protecting the Forbidden Scroll and capturing a traitor. Even if he wasn't technically a shinobi yet, Naruto had performed 3 services for the village with 2 being of critical importance. He'd think of some way to repay Naruto later since it was almost time for his next teacher to show up. Naruto, your next teacher will be here soon, so make a batch of clones that can stay here and keep learning while you go train. Hiruzen stated, knowing that Naruto's talent with shadow clones meant he could do multiple trainings at once. Naruto nodded and made 3 clones for each set of work before sitting and relaxing until the door opened. Standing there was Might Guy in his usual attire and his smile. Ah, Naruto-kun, you're here already. Excellent, you're blazing with flames of youth. Guy stated before exclaiming loud enough that the windows rattled. Yeah, sure. I take it you're helping me with speed and taijutsu. Naruto asked, making Guy nod with his nice guy pose. That's right, if I can't help get you into shape within the month then I shall run around Konoha on my hands for 500 laps. Guy stated with his pose still in place. Whatever motivates you and makes you stronger, Guy-sensei. Naruto stated, making Guy smile further, if possible, before he led Naruto to the training ground he picked for this. Hiruzen merely watched them go with a foreboding feeling about him. One of the clones saw it and spoke. Don't worry Gramps, Guy already promised Jiraiya-sensei that he wouldn't try to put boss in a green spandex suit like him and Lee. The clone stayed, making Hiruzen sigh in relief before he turned to helping the clones. Training Field 52. Guy stood across from Naruto, who decided to forego his jacket since it wouldn't be helpful right now, and looked at him intently. Alright, now do you have a preference for taijutsu or have learned any taijutsu styles? Guy asked and Naruto shook his head, making Guy frown. I see, well the benefit of that is you can learn one style easily since there will be no conflicting stances in your mind. Guy stayed, making Naruto sigh in relief since he thought it was going to be a big problem. Alright, since Lee and I specialize in the strong fist style, it would be best not to have you learn that right now as it would put you at a disadvantage against Neji. He's seen myself and Lee training and using it too many times for it to be fully effective. Guy stated, knowing there was nothing wrong about stating an obvious fact like that. With that in mind, you and I are going to have a spar so I can get a feel for your preferred fighting style and then help you from there. Guy stated, making Naruto nod before taking his own form of ready stance. Later, Guy could honestly say he had never been as out of breath as he was right now. What Naruto lacked in precision, speed, and technique, he made up for with a lot in raw power, determination, and stamina. Not even Lee had as much raw strength and determination when fighting, and that was saying something. Guy knew fully well that Naruto was wearing weights and gravity seals, but still, the way he fought with everything he had and kept going after being knocked down or away was something else. As for the style to train him in, Guy was definitely training him in the strong fist at some point. While the different lotus techniques were probably not going to work for him, the basic style of fighting would fit him perfect, especially with his speed increasing steadily. For now though, there were a couple of styles that would fit Naruto, and one stuck out as the best option for him to increase his skill and help him in the long run. Alright Naruto, I've seen enough. Guy stayed, making Naruto relax and take some calming breaths. Naruto isn't even breathing heavily yet and we've been fighting for a good 3 hours. Guy thought before shaking those thoughts away. I've got a style that should suit your needs both currently and in the future. The only issue is I'm not well versed in it, so I can get you started and help you with it, but can't fully train you in it. Guy stated, making Naruto frown in confusion. I may be a taijutsu master, Naruto, but that doesn't mean that I've mastered every style there is. It just means that when it comes to taijutsu, I am very hard to defeat and that I've mastered at least one style. Guy stated, seeing Naruto's frown and making Naruto nod. Now, since I can't fully teach you the style I have in mind, I am going to teach you a style I know very well that can help set the groundwork for the style. The reason being that they are very similar to each other, but one relies more on speed and deflection while the other is pinpoint accuracy and power in the hits. Guy informed and then elaborated on, making Naruto nod again. Good, now the style we will be starting with is the Ichani fighting style, and upon getting the hang of it will set the groundwork for the Wing Chun style that I believe will be of use to you even if it doesn't fully fit your style of fighting. Guy informed, causing Naruto to get a fire in his eyes that told Guy that the boy intended to master them both. Part of Guy actually believed he could too. Alright, let's first get you comfortable in the starting stance. Guy stated as he began instructing Naruto on the different forms of Ichani that he can work towards, as it was based around giving options and different characteristics of fighting for their user. The user also had to be able to endure attacks too, since sometimes the best way to strike an enemy is to let them get a hit in before making them pay for said hit. Wing Chun though was an all-around form of fighting, as it was about quick, precise, accurate strikes while deflecting and reading your opponent's moves quickly and effectively. The user though needed to build up muscle and tolerance around the forearms, since they usually were used for blocking a variety of hits, and a wooden training dummy with multiples arms was used. One user was reported to have taken down 10 highly trained taijutsu users single-handedly all at once. Naruto could honestly say that he was looking forward to the training a great deal. Day 7. Naruto was still a bit sore from his taijutsu training the previous day, but it had been well worth it. Thanks to the shadow clones, he had been able to get the stances they had covered down so he could move into them on reflex. While the clones trained in the stances, Naruto was sparring with Guy and a batch of his own clones to better get acclimated to the way of fighting. As an added bonus, he had his clones remove their weights and seals so he'd have to adapt to fighting opponents that were faster than him. When Guy asked why, Naruto merely informed him that he couldn't take the chance that someone he faced would be faster and not be able to somehow keep up. When Lee fought Gaara, Naruto couldn't follow him at all, so what would happen if Naruto ever fought someone that was as fast or even faster than Lee? The answer: he'd get his kicked 6 ways to Sunday. Hence why he wanted to start training to be able to track, follow, and react to opponents of that speed. Even if he never fully achieved the speed that Lee did, Naruto wanted to be sure he could at least keep up with his eyes and brain so his body could possibly react in time. Guy had agreed and even suggested that next time they trained that he himself would remove his weights and fight Naruto and his clones, while a set of clones would sit off to the side focusing on watching the fight. If they could follow the movements from an observer's point of view, then it would help to follow it from a fighter's point of view. Naruto broke from his thoughts as the door opened and he was surprised that Anko Mitarashi came in with her usual attire. "Come on kid, I got 3 weeks to help whip you into shape and I'm not going to waste a minute of it," Anko stated, making Naruto quickly follow her, leaving a chuckling Hiruzen behind. Naruto was idly surprised as they were back at the Forest of Death. "Listen up kid, I'm gonna be helping you with accuracy, agility, my own style of taijutsu, poisons, quick herbal remedies, and fighting unfairly. We're ninja, that means we sneak in, slit our enemies' throats, and then sneak out. If you want honorable or the like, then become a samurai or challenge someone to an honor duel, otherwise you play and fight to win always," Anko stated, making Naruto nod as he stood straighter. "Good, now I plan to work you to the bone and I better not hear any whining or complaining about it or I'll send you to the hospital faster than you can say Hokage," Anko stated, and Naruto nodded again with a fierce look in his eyes that actually impressed her. "Okay, first up is agility training, which is easy, you're just gonna have to dodge," she stated with a sickly sweet smile as she started throwing kunai, senbon, and shuriken at Naruto, who yelped before dodging and weaving through the sharp metal instruments of death and pain. The whole time Anko just kept her smile and laughed viciously at him. Naruto was panting slightly while his clothes were a bit cut up and torn in some areas as Anko was smiling at him, pleased with both herself and him for doing so well since she didn't draw more than a few drops of blood from him. The few times she didn't throw at him, she'd attack in taijutsu using her flexibility and agility to attack him at different angles. Naruto looked at his clothes and frowned. "At this rate I'm going to need a bunch of new clothes," he thought, since the training was slowly killing all of his clothing and dwindling it down to near nothing. He broke from his musings as Anko spoke up. "Not bad kid, I've seen Jonin do far worse than you did and you didn't even have any real warning. At this rate I'll have you able to dodge almost anything," she stated with a sickly sweet smile that made Naruto sweat drop a bit. However, a thought came to his mind that also reminded him of something concerning Kabuto, Anko-sensei. Naruto started making Anko freeze and look at him in surprise, which confused him. "Sensei?" Anko asked in confusion, and Naruto shrugged. "Well, you are teaching me, aren't you? Should I not call you sensei?" Naruto asked, and Anko blinked before shaking her head. No, it's fine, just never had anyone call me that before." "Anyway, what did you want?" Anko asked, and Naruto blinked before speaking. "Well, I was just wondering why you have the smell of snakes around you exactly. Is it because of the forest or is it something else?" Naruto asked, making Anko stiffen slightly and turn away with a saddened expression. "It's because I have the snake summoning contract. Something my bastard of a former teacher let me have before he betrayed me in the village." "Why do you ask?" Anko stated bitterly before looking at Naruto questioningly with a slight undertone of anger. "Well, it's just you're not the first that I smelled the scent of snakes on. There was that creepy guy Orochimaru in the Forest of Death, then the Sound Team, and then another Leaf Shinobi, but I guess it could have been if he was hanging out with you," Naruto stated, making Anko tense a bit at the first mention, narrow her eyes at the second mention, but she was confused on the third. "Who was that?" Anko asked, since she was around a few people but no one ever mentioned smelling of snakes. That guy Kabuto Yakushi, Naruto asked, making Anko frown. I've never met or interacted with the guy. Anko stated, making Naruto frown. Well, if he didn't get the scent from her, then he had to have gotten it from, oh shit. Naruto started thinking before widening his eyes in horror. What is it, kid? Anko asked with a frown. Anko, was your teacher Orochimaru? He asked frantically, making Anko nod. Then we need to get to Gramps now. The village could be in trouble. Naruto stated, and Anko frowned before quickly grabbing him and using a shunshin to get to the tower quickly. Hiruzen, of course, was surprised at Naruto and Anko appearing in his office. Anko, Naruto, what's wrong? He asked, seeing Anko looking serious and Naruto looked frantic. Gramps, I think Orochimaru has a spy in the village. Naruto stated, making Hiruzen and Anko stiffen. That's a bold claim, Naruto. Do you know who and have proof? Hiruzen asked and Naruto nodded. His name is Kabuto Yakushi. Ever since I've been working with Ibiki-sensei, I've started going over people I've met to have a read on them inside my head, and something kept sticking out about Kabuto that I couldn't place until I talked to Anko-sensei. Naruto stated, making Hiruzen frown and look at Anko. Apparently the guy smells like snakes, but I've never even met the guy and there are no indigenous snakes in the Forest of Death. Anko stated, and Hiruzen frowned further before asking an Anbu to retrieve Ibiki to join them, which he did a few minutes later and was being filled in. That's suspicious, yes, but is there any other evidence? Ibiki asked, since they needed to be sure, and all three turned to Naruto. Well, for one, he's taken the Chunin exams 7 times now. Naruto stated, making them widen their eyes in shock, since no one took the exams that many times without something being seriously wrong. Ibiki quickly got his file and looked it over. He's right, all 7 times he made it past the second exam and then suddenly just quit, claiming he had no more chakra to go on. It also shows that he's been staying by the hospital and hasn't been out on many missions besides C-rank border patrols. Ibiki stated with a scowl, knowing that this had slipped past his notice and it would be easy for Kabuto to get information out of the village because the Hokage sent him outside it. This is serious. Naruto, what other evidence do you have to further your case? Hiruzen stated, since they needed as much ammo as possible in order to ensure they got the right person. Well, he also had information on native and foreign shinobi like Gaara, but he had detailed information down to how many of each rank mission they had taken. He knew that Gaara had taken B in a rank missions without even getting a scratch. He knew how many missions Lee had been on, who his teammates were, what their specialties were, and everything else too. Naruto stated, making them all look on in shock and horror, since there was no way a genin could access that kind of information without some form of treason occurring. Ibiki, get Kat and her squad and find this boy and his teammates. I want them found, captured, and interrogated, no holds barred. If they can't be captured, then I want them seriously wounded to ensure they can't make it far. If needs be, then eliminate them to keep from reporting to any possible enemies. Hiruzen stated, going into full military mode, making Ibiki nod and was about to leave when Naruto interrupted. Wait, those sound genin. They smelled of snakes too, and I think Sakura mentioned they worked for Orochimaru when they attacked us in the forest. Naruto stated, making them stiffen in fear. If Orochimaru had a village at his beck and call, then there was no telling how much trouble the Leaf could be in. Get them as well, Ibiki, but do it as quietly as possible and do not tell anyone what you are doing or why. If they ask, tell them it's a Hokage mission and to pry is to be tried with treason. Hiruzen stated, knowing this was indeed serious, especially with Jiraiya sending news about Sound having recruited a lot of missing nin and ronin within the past few months. That could only mean Hiruzen's former student was gearing up for something big. Without wasting a moment, Ibiki was gone to carry out his orders while mentally reminding himself to possibly get Naruto placed in the intelligence corps. If he turned out to be correct on this, then he could have saved countless lives for the village. Hiruzen sat back in his chair and sighed. Not for the first time was he feeling his ever-growing age coming upon him. He then looked at the blonde youth in front of him and couldn't help but see his parents at that age overlapping him. This boy, he may have just yet again performed a service for the village greater than anyone but a few in a room would know. If he keeps this up, he may just take this hat from me himself. Hiruzen thought with a happy smile, knowing Naruto was truly shaping into the shinobi he knew he could become. Naruto, if this information turns out to be accurate, you will be well rewarded and compensated for not only protecting Konoha from an outside threat that could be greater than we know, but also for identifying and removing spies that have been able to hide for too long. Hiruzen stated in his Hokage-like tone and presence, making Naruto chuckle while scratching his head in embarrassment. I like you, kid. You ever need anything, let me know. However, don't expect me to take it easy on you any days that I'm still gonna be training you. Anko stated with a sadistic grin, and Naruto merely grinned back. I'd be insulted if you did, Anko-sensei. Naruto stated, making Hiruzen chuckle at the two. He truly hoped he got to live long enough to see how much Naruto would grow. 3 days later, 10th day of training. Naruto was walking with Ibiki and Anko in the TI tower doing his next bout of training, the practical kind. He was here to try his hand at breaking a prisoner and getting the information from them. His targets were Zaku Abumi, Kintsuchi, and Yoroi Akato, the two remaining sound shinobi, as Dosu was found dead the previous day and one of the spies that couldn't get away from the hospital. As for the others, Masumi Tsurugi was dead from a poison that Kankuro had on his puppet's arms, and Kabuto was in the wind, but every available Anbu was on the lookout for him. Ibiki and Anko both had approached the Hokage about having Naruto do it under supervision. When asked why, they explained not only would it be good experience for Naruto, but it would also help him grow as a shinobi. He had already been on a mission where interrogation was needed and had no idea what to do, so what if it happened again? Kakashi clearly wasn't teaching effectively, and where else would Naruto learn? Better that he try his hand at it in a controlled environment than trying first in the field where screwing up can ruin things. If he made a mistake in the normal interrogation, then it was at least fixable thanks to the medics they had on hand and the experienced interrogators and guards. Hiruzen had relented, but he wanted guards and both of them in place should something go wrong. The two agreed before informing Naruto and telling him to think of ways to extract the information himself while giving him what info they had in the three targets. Ibiki and Anko made it clear they weren't going to help him in getting the information and he had to think of the ways to interrogate them himself. He had agreed and spent the previous 2 days thinking of what he could do to them and what would be most effective against each person. Of course, Naruto's main job was to extract information and get details on what Orochimaru was planning, since it wasn't hard to deduce it was going to take place during the finals for the Chunin exams. While breaking one would be enough, there was the likelihood that each only had a piece of the plan, so having the 3 different accounts would help get a better idea of the whole plan. However, regardless of if he failed or not, it was good practical experience for him. He then stopped at a room where Yoroi was tied down to a chair and Ibiki let him in before closing the door. Ibiki and Anko would be watching and making notes of anything that came out, as well as Naruto's methods, since he could be as cruel or kind as he pleased so long as he got the results and didn't cross a specific line. Naruto walked in and pulled a chair in front of Yoroi. Really? Out of everyone in this piece of shit village that they could have sent, they sent the loudmouth ninja wannabe from the Chunin exams. Yoroi mocked before he was forced to turn his head as Naruto backhanded him, making him lose a few teeth. You don't talk unless I ask you a question, Naruto stated coldly as he sat in his chair in front of Yoroi. Now let's make something clear, you're a traitor to my village, which means I have carte blanche to do whatever I please to get you to talk, and I know how to do so while being painful about it. Naruto stated, knowing that he had to be serious and cold right now since the safety of the village was at stake. Now, you're going to answer my questions about what Orochimaru is planning, and before you say you're not going to answer, Naruto stated before stabbing Yoroi in the foot, making him yell in pain. Naruto then placed his hands on the arms of the chair and looked at him. I will get the information from you, whether you decide to cooperate with me right away or not, Naruto stated before Yoroi started chuckling before laughing as he grabbed Naruto's wrists with his hands. Let's see how talkative you are when you don't have any chakra, Yoroi stated with a dark grin, knowing he tried to pull away and thus help Yoroi get free of the chair. His plan was trashed, however, when Naruto started laughing. You think I'm worried about you stealing my chakra? You're mistaken. I have enough chakra that I could stand here all day and not feel tired at all, but I won't need to since you're just going to harm yourself doing this, Naruto stated with a dark smirk, making Yoroi frown in confusion before he screamed as his arms started to feel like they were on fire. What is this? Yoroi screamed in agony and Naruto just smirked. Apparently Kabuto or Orochimaru didn't tell you just who the I am, Naruto stated before leaning into his ear. I'm the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, Naruto stated, making him stiffen and widen his eyes in horror. My seal slowly puts Kyuubi's chakra into my own to be absorbed and changed into my own, but it takes time to do that and your body isn't accustomed to a Bijuu's chakra. So right now the chakra is slowly eating away at your chakra coils and the pain will only get worse the longer you're draining me, Naruto stated before he grabbed Yoroi's hands when he tried to let go. You don't get off that easily. Looking back on how you acted with your teammates, you were always so careful not to touch them, which leads me to believe you can't control when you start draining chakra and when you stop. So until you tell me everything, I'm just going to hold on and keep letting you drain my chakra, thus letting your coils slowly deteriorate while your body is in agony, Naruto stated, making Yoroi panic as he tried to get free only to scream as the burning reached his shoulders and started to travel down his back. This will end if you tell me everything you know, otherwise I'll hold on to you until the chakra starts getting to your vital areas. Then I'll let go and just leave you in the agony of having your coils burned out while your chakra starts to eat away at your own body and you slowly succumb to a painful agonizing death with no way to fix it or numb the pain, Naruto stated coldly, and it didn't take more than another minute before Yoroi was spilling his guts about everything he knew about Orochimaru's plan, including his, Masumi's, and Kabuto's roles to play when the time came. When he finished, and swore pleadingly enough that it was all he knew, Naruto released him and left the room. However, no sooner did he close the door did he rush to the nearest trash can and empty his stomach. It felt wrong and somewhat sickening to do that and mean it, but Naruto knew he had to since part of his career choice was interrogation, assassination, torture, resisting torture, and other dark aspects that civilians were better off not knowing about. He caught his breath as he felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see Ibiki there holding a handkerchief, which Naruto took and wiped his mouth and face with. First one's always rough. Anyone tells you differently is a liar. Just take it one step at a time and you'll start being able to stomach it better, but you'll never truly be numb to it. Ibiki stated, making Naruto nod before he took a cup of water and splashed his face a bit with it to help him relax a bit. Once he was settled, he was led to Zaku's room while still hearing Yoroi screaming in pain from what the bit of Kyuubi's chakra had already done. Entering the room, he could see Zaku was already in rough shape since his arms couldn't be reattached and the nerve damage was making him be in constant pain. Of course, since being there, he had received no medication for the pain and it was only making him move in the chair more. I see you're settled in nicely, Naruto stated, going to a table where a cloth over an item lay. You, Konoha trash, Zaku snarled before hissing in pain at the movement causing his stumps to hurt. Yeah, save the tough guy act for someone who cares. Let's just cut to the chase of things, shall we? I know you work for Orochimaru, I know he has something planned concerning the finals of the Chunin exams, and I know he sent your team to test Sasuke after getting the curse mark, meaning you were just cannon fodder for him. Naruto stated, bringing the object and cloth with him as he sat in front of Zaku. Now, what I want to know is what he has planned and what he's going to do specifically, since your ally Yoroi didn't have all the specifics, and from what you can hear he wasn't treated nicely before he talked. Naruto stated, making Zaku scowl, but there was some fear in his eyes since he had heard how Yoroi was said to be fearless and had a high tolerance for pain thanks to Kabuto. Do your worst. I don't care if you kill me, I'll never tell you anything. Zulu stated, making Naruto chuckle before laughing. Kill you? Oh no, I'm not going to kill you, that would be too merciful. Naruto stated before looking darkly at Zaku. No, I'm going to use this for some of it. Naruto stated, removing the cloth, making Zaku's eyes widen since it was Dosu's melody arm. You bastard, you killed Dosu, Zaku shouted before grunting as his stumps flared up. No, I didn't, apparently he had a bone to pick with Suna's Jinchuriki and died because of it. Naruto stated, making Zaku stiffen since he knew who that was, but back to your troubles, we've studied this and know the basic workings. What I'm going to do with it is connect it to your chair so that every time you move it will send a chime that will not only cause excruciating pain, but will make your brain start making the nerve endings flare up, causing greater pain. Naruto stated, making Zaku pale slightly. Then I just want move, you. Zaku shouted and Naruto merely smirked. Who said that was all there was to it? Naruto stated, making Zaku resist the urge to gulp. The whole time this is set up, I'm going to be having one of our specialists cut off the rest of your arms, then your toes, your feet, then your legs, then we'll take your eyes, your nose, and your tongue. But not your ears, oh no, that wouldn't do. After we stabilize you and ensure you're not going to die of infection or anything, I'm going to have you transported to a town in Fire Country asking people to take care of you and compensating them. However, the whole time you'll have to hear people talk about that thing, how that thing used to be a person, what happened to that thing to make them that way, what could have happened to that thing, look it's that thing, and so on and so on. I'll have a ninja come by to check and see if you want to talk, and if not we just move you to a new town where you'll have to hear it all again and again, since I can use this little trinket to make sure you hear every single detail and word spoken about you, but you'll never be able to do anything about it. Then, once you've broken and told me everything, will I be merciful and kill you, but if the info is wrong or becomes useless then I'll leave you like you are for the rest of your life as you drive yourself mad hearing everything. Naruto threatened, making Zaku pale considerably while looking sick at the thought of that. Needless to say, Zaku quickly spilled his guts, figuratively, as being in prison was better than that. Ibiki took down everything since Anko was, well, I think I'm in love. Anko shouted with hearts in her eyes. What she had witnessed was so cruel, sadistic, and unnecessarily brutal that it made Anko's heart skip a few beats and her body to heat up. She'd definitely be spending time helping Naruto now, if only to see if his stamina related to other matters too.